The Old Testament was communicated in visions, product of experiences the people had, and product of personal knowledge. So that's why you will see sandwiched with the revelation that they had will be their experiences and their own personal knowledge, which means it's a combination of many factors that will require to be rightly divided. Pay attention. So which means that the Old Testament has incomplete information about God, incomplete information about Satan, incomplete information about you, and incomplete information about man. So if your belief system is structured in the Old Testament, if your belief system is structured in the Old Testament, it cannot be sound. If your belief system is structured only in the Old Testament, it cannot be sound, because the Old Testament has incomplete information, which could actually be referred to as misinformation. When partial truth is communicated, it can misinform, and when there is misinformation, it will lead to deformation. Misinformation can lead to deformation. And you know, we live in an age where what we're engaged in is what I call information war. Information war. That's why social media has become so powerful. That's why you cannot, no country can ignore social media. No country in the world. No country in the world can ignore Instagram. No country in the world can ignore even TikTok. No country in the world can. America wants to ban TikTok. And even the reaction in TikTok made America to step back and say, okay, we will look for a way. We'll look for a way, because the world, it's information war. Whoever controls information controls the world. Whoever controls information, whether it is accurate information or deformation or misinformation or partial information, whoever controls information controls the world, because information will determine what you believe. What you believe will determine the quality of your life. What you hear is what you believe. What you believe is what you say. What you say is who you become. So information is critical, and that's why Bible teaching cannot be compromised with in these last days, because if we're going to raise matured believers, they must be soundly informed. They must be well informed concerning God, concerning God's plan for man, concerning man's enemy, and concerning God's plan and purpose for mankind. We've got to teach. That's why we're teaching you this morning. That's why we're taking time to teach you God's word, and we're teaching it as accurate as possible, because you can't afford to be misinformed concerning eternal issues, eternal realities, and eternal details. So if your belief system is only structured in the Old Testament, you will be misinformed, because the Old Testament only carries partial revelation, progressive revelation, or the Old Testament only carries a portion of the truth, not the whole truth. A portion of the truth, not the whole truth. That's why in the Old Testament you can see God kills, God makes alive, God destroys, God saves. You will see God causes disasters and God protects from disasters. Why? Because it's partial information. If you stay with that, you will have a belief system of a bipolar God, a God that has a mental condition that needs to be confined to a mental institution. That's the picture of God you will have, where one time he's good, one time he's bad, and if he wants to be good, extremely good. If he wants to be bad, extremely bad. What is that? Bipolar. That's a medical condition. But the Old Testament gives you that kind of picture, because the Old Testament was communicated in that form because God was revealed to the Old Testament people progressively. Along with the revelation, they had their own personal knowledge communicated, their experiences communicated, all put together to form what you call the Old Testament. Moreover, the Old Testament was communicated in a world that is not your world, a language that is not your language, vocabulary that is not your vocabulary, culture that is not your culture, communication method that is not your communication method. The other day I stood there and I said, if the person the devil possesses is mumu, the devil will be a mumushous devil. Now there are countries in the world that don't understand mumu, so people started asking on social media, Papa, what is mumu? Please explain. What is mumu? What is mumu? It's a communication I have done that other cultures and other nations are not conversant with, but we in Nigeria here, it's easy to know who a mumu is. A mumu is a mumu. Mumu. Mumu is mumu. Or a mumu is somebody who is stupid, right? Somebody is stupid. Somebody is stupid. That's mumu. Somebody is stupid. So if somebody tells you mumu, he's saying stupid. That's what it means. Okay? But you wouldn't know it except you have been in our culture, except you are used to the way we communicate here in Nigeria, or here within our society. So the Bible has such languages that were used in Bible days that when you read, you will think it's English. That's why you can't use a Macmillan dictionary to understand biblical words. The Bible has its own language that it uses in communicating the truths of God.